Welcome to the Wholesome Healing Collective.
Join us on our podcast for a journey into the hearts of healers from all walks of life, diving deep as we explore meaningful conversations that have the power to inspire, empower, and share life-changing wisdom.
Through this community, we hope to create a welcoming environment where our listeners leave feeling nurtured and uplifted. We are so delighted you are here. My name is Alyssa.
And I'm Renee. Grab a drink, get cozy, and let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of the Wholesome Healing Collective podcast. Renee and Alyssa here today, and we are just chatting about energy centers and wanting to explore what that means and how maybe we can create coherence in the body with those energy centers.
Yeah, this is such a fun topic, and I feel like it's one that is starting to branch away from its origins. If you're into yoga or any of the practices of Eastern medicine, you're probably familiar with the concept of chakras and the energy centers that live in the various places in our body. And it seems like it's becoming a little bit more known outside of the yogic origins and being talked about a little bit more in mainstream as it relates to what energy lives in these areas, how we can use this energy for various intentions, and also how can we be mindful of energetically cleansing, maintaining, optimizing the energy in these areas so that our whole energetic body is in coherence and on the same page, if you will.
I love that. And did you first hear about the energy centers and the chakras from yoga, or were you introduced to them anywhere else?
Definitely yoga was the first introduction to it, and and I feel like in a lot of classes it's kind of touched on, but not really taught per se. And then in yoga teacher training, I got to learn a lot more. And then through our pause training, um, I got to learn from a different perspective that wasn't necessarily tied to the yogic origins per se, but had a lot of the same through lines and information. I think pretty much anywhere you read about chakras, you're going to find the same descriptions related to each energy center, like your root being connected to your safety, your stability, your foundation. That's pretty universal, regardless of where you're learning from. And then there's other aspects that might be different. Some systems might say we have 7 chakras, some say there's 9. There's a little bit of variation in those regards, but for the most part, I think there's a lot of through lines no matter where you're learning it from, which is nice.
Yeah, I'm curious about the 9. Do you know where the extra 2 are located?
I believe the extra 2 are just higher above the crown. I know it's one of them are, but I think both of them are. So it's like 6 inches, 11 inches, and like 16 inches or something like that.
So
And it's just
fascinating.
further connection above, I believe. Don't quote me on that part of it. I'm
I,
more familiar with the 7 system.
I know about the soul chakra, so I was wondering if like where the extra one is it below or is it even higher? So it's just, and there's even more than the 7 and the 9. Those are just
Totally.
the smaller ones. Maybe like, yeah. So the
Yeah, you
systems are
have the main ones that are in your central channel, but then you also have the smaller ones, like ones in your hands and your feet. A lot of times when you're doing grounding meditations, they're talking about growing roots through the soles of your feet, and that's going through energy centers in your feet as well. You just hear more about the big ones.
yeah.
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 Really, we've got this whole electric energetic map in our bodies with all of the meridians, which are all the little lines of energy that go out to every area of our bodies. So it's fun to play with that and feel into our body being that energetic. Um, I'm envisioning like energized water because we're made of water.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to talk about the main seven?
Yeah, yeah, let's give an overview. Yeah, so we've got one is the root that is our at the base of the spine, um, most connected to our sense of safety and stability and our ability to ground and anchor into the present moment. And then we have number two, which is our sacral, and that is our womb center, the area that is above the root but below the belly button. This is where our creativity lies, our sense of passion and creation, that watery, fluid movement. And then our third energy center is the solar plexus. That's right below our rib cage, most connected to, you might hear it as referenced as the seat of power in the body, our will, um, our drive in life can be connected to there. And then we have our heart, our fourth energy center, of course, connected with love, infinite love, that flowy energy of love that we get to share with ourselves and with the world. And then up into the throat, our throat's our fifth center. This is our place of expression and how we bring our truth into the world. And then we have our third eye in between the eyebrows. This is our sense of inner knowing, our intuition. And then we have our crown, which is above about, 6 inches or so above the head. And this is our connection to divine source, the world beyond worlds, whatever feels good in those regards as reference. And then they all connect along our central channel of energy that moves from head to toe. And so, um, what is amazing is that within each energy center, there's its own flavor, its own flow, its own representation of emotionality and feeling. But then there's also the bigger picture of the whole central channel and how they all, when they're in coherence and alignment with each other, just so beautifully magnify each other and dance with each other to create this holistic, vibrant energy that is us.
Mhm. I love that. And they all have their own color and they're all associated with different parts of the body, which I think is so fascinating that it's not just like energy, like it is tied into our physical body.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we explore these different centers, um, we get to notice those sensations. And sometimes those sensations are very physical. Like you might feel a contraction in an area or an expansion in an area, or you might sense other things like color, like texture, like emotionality that might get stored in those energy centers. And that's when we get to have that opportunity to clear and cleanse those areas. And sometimes it's not necessarily cleansing, sometimes it's just bringing an acknowledgement there for what is alive in that area, whether it's emotionality or contraction or expansion, and allowing whatever is there to process, to be felt fully, to integrate into the wholeness of the rest of the energy so that it can all move with fluidity.
Mm. I just love how you're riffing on all of this. It's so cool how it just comes right through you. Mm.
I love talking about the energy centers, and um I'll reference someone I really love to follow, Jeffrey Allen. He's someone that I've learned from a lot around the energy centers and starting to feel into and get to know each one. Um, in my experience, it's you get to kind of have like a relationship with each center. And what I've found to be true is that while we can hold emotions and trauma and experiences from our life in all areas of the body, for me personally, I find that they're often attached to those energy centers. And while I might have something in a different place, often in coaching sessions, my focus and sensations that I explore inevitably end up being in one of those energy centers. And when I can liberate that energy and kind of unkink the line of the central channel, it's amazing how big of a difference it can make when energy starts to flow. Because, especially, I'll just use myself as an example, I will often feel constriction or a kink in the line when it comes to my solar plexus in that place of power. And I've been working a lot on um, sparking that fire in me and really. Um, stoking that ember energy. And I've done a lot of work with clearing that center because that tends to be the place where I will often absorb energy from the outside world. We kind of touched on this when we talked about human design. This is my undefined center, so I'm more susceptible to soaking up from the outside world in that center. And so that's my area where I get to have more presence and mindfulness around hygiene of that energy and keeping that channel clear so that my lower chakras and my upper chakras can move and flow together. When my solar plexus is really jammed up, I can really get stuck in one set or the other. I can get really stuck in the earthing and the grounding and kind of feeling stuck. And I can also get stuck up here in the mind and the spiraling of thoughts and doubts and like all those things that the ego comes up with up here. And it's really when I can bring the energy up and through and kind of clear that blockage that I feel the most the most aligned, the most centered, the most grounded in a light way. Like we can get grounded in a distorted way where it feels stuck and lethargic. I'm a very earthy person, so I can really fall into that like lethargic energy if I am not careful. So when the energy is moving through the whole channel, I can feel that tethered groundedness while also feeling the lightness of my heart, of my expression, of my creativity. So
Mm,
I love central channel clearing and all that good stuff.
yeah. Yeah, we spend a lot of time bringing energy up from the earth and energy down from above and really just like almost like flossing, out our
Yeah.
central channel and like
Yeah, that's a good
just
way to look
clearing
at
it out.
it. Yeah.
My head and ajna are open. So those are centers that I have to really almost like bring in the energy from above and just like bring it all the way down into the earth to cleanse it if it's not mine, like letting it go instead of allowing it to live rent free in my head and not serve me. So it's like similar, but a different part of my body.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have those areas um, where we are more susceptible to pick up energy from the outside world. And it's a great exploration to go on in our personal journeys to figure out what that area is that we might be a little more open to the outside world, and where we might store the energy that's not ours. And starting that practice of identifying what energy is mine and becoming familiar with your unique energy blueprint or flavor. And then once you're so familiar with visiting your energy day in and day out, it becomes so much easier to recognize when there's energy there that's not yours. So that's a great question to ask yourself when you run into those kinks in the line, when you run into the stickiness in an energy center, asking yourself, is this mine to process and feel, or is this someone else's that I just need to let go? I don't need to analyze it. I don't need to process it. I just need to let it wash through me. And it's amazing how that acknowledgement and questioning, when that little bit of truth comes through of the body saying, oh, actually, this isn't mine. The mind's like, oh, well, we can get rid of this then. Like, let's not waste our time. Let's go, you know?
Yeah.
Versus when there's confusion around, is this mine? Is it not? You're gonna have you're more likely to have a tendency to analyze and want to make story and understand and conceptualize and all these things that we want to go through before we let it go. And sometimes we just make it harder than it needs to be, right?
Yeah. It's having that awareness to pause and ask that question.
Yeah.
Um, and it sounds easy. You can literally ask the body, is this mine? And it will answer you, but you need to create that relationship with the body. And a lot of what we're talking about in this moment is a combination of somatic sensations and visualizations of each energy center as we're spending time in the body. And again, that's just part of creating that relationship. But do you have any tips on those sensations or visualizations?
Yeah, I think that um visualizations might come naturally and you might just intuitively see things as you're exploring those energy centers. And if visualization isn't something that comes naturally, um, just exploring what that doorway in for you is, because it might be a texture that you feel or an emotion that arises. And rather than noticing that and then trying to make yourself see something, just allowing yourself to go into that and be with the feeling, be with the texture, and just create that curiosity um, without the agenda, right? So the mind always wants to figure it out. We're meaning making machines, but inviting in that spaciousness where you just get to explore it. And maybe a vision arises, maybe a memory arises, maybe it's just an energy that needs to move. So kind of just staying open-minded when you're doing that exploration. And then each energy center has different things you can do to clear it. I mean, we can use a visualization like a clearing exercise where we're kind of like what you said, where we're bringing energy in and we're washing it through and going downward, or we're bringing energy up through the root and we're letting it move up and into the sky. That can be beautiful. And we can also focus in one energy center if we're really feeling stuck in that place. So if it's the root and you're feeling like there's a sense of stuckness around safety or stability, then the exercise might be grounding and envisioning those roots and going um, into that earthy energy. But conversely, if the energy's stuck up here and you're feeling like you need balance in the crown chakra, it might not be grounding that you need. It may be the connection to source or to the universe or to God, whatever that connection is, and allowing yourself to go into stillness and really connect upward and open yourself up to the beyond. And that's what this energy center needs. Or um, when we're thinking about the womb and the sacral center, your place of creativity, and there's more of that watery flavor and energy there. If you're feeling really stuck there, it might not be grounding or stillness you need. You might actually need movement. and actually engaging the body to create flowy, slow movements to get that energy moving again, because maybe there's too much grounding and too much stagnation there. So what works for one energy center isn't necessarily what is the remedy for all the energy centers. So that gets to be an exploration too of what does this energy center need to move freely again.
Mm. Yeah, that's so perfect.
Yeah.
And allowing just any like wisdom or invitation to do what feels natural to you to open and move and clear out each center. That is totally part of the process. And if the visualizations aren't coming naturally, you can simply just imagine what it might look like or feel like. And that might be the doorway in is tapping into your imagination and just letting it flow from there.
Yeah, good point. Sometimes a beautiful question to ask if you're in a place where you are maybe asking what this part needs, what this energy center needs, and there's not much coming through. I love the question of, well, if you did know, what
Mm.
would that energy center need? Or if you were to visualize it, what would it feel like for energy to be flowing freely there? And letting that imagination like, oh, well, it would feel like this watery, slow moving type of energy. It would feel like I wasn't restricted, and it would feel like I could channel that creativity through my mouth and speak my truth. And that's when we get to also notice the connection between the energy centers as well. You know, you might feel a constriction in the throat, but maybe it's not that you need to work on the throat. Maybe it's really that creativity that's blocked that really wants to come out and through you. And it's the movement that you need. So just exploring and letting letting the different energy centers guide you to each other so that they can play nicely together.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. Anything else you want to share about the energy centers?
Um, One thing I love to play with, this is also a reference to some of the work that I learned from Jeffrey Allen, and the concept of each one of our energy centers having a dial that we can have mindful control over. So when we're in a situation, say we're connecting in a relationship scenario, and we feel that heart energy there and we feel our energy flowing and we want to turn up that dial, we can imagine as because the energy isn't flowing just like this. You know, we think of chakra being a wheel, so it's natural to think of the energy flowing in this circular motion, but it's really flowing like this as well. It's flowing
Mm.
from the front and the back, from each side, and it's moving outward. And when we're connecting with someone, it's going to move further out from the body than if we're in just connection with ourselves. So as we connect with someone, it's moving, it's dancing with their energy fields, and we can mindfully turn up that dial and even turn down the dial of the other energy centers. Say we're in connection, we're feeling the heart flow, but the mind is still active, and we're noticing maybe you're trying to think of what to say next or anything like that that the mind's coming up with. We can imagine turning that dial down and turning our heart dial up and envisioning this energy center kind of coming into a smaller place, and then this energy center expanding out. And it's so cool to feel that energy increase in an area because we're bringing that mindful attention to it. And and then when we're ready, we can say, okay, now we're bringing it back in. And that can be really useful in session, but it can also be really useful in the workplace if you're going to a presentation and you're wanting to be more intellectual and tap into your knowing, and maybe you don't necessarily need your creative centers online, and so you're going to actively bring more attention to your upper chakras and less to the bottom. Or vice versa, you're in a scenario where you're like, I really need to feel grounded. I really need to feel safe in my expression and in my movement. So you're actively going to turn the first three ones up and turn the top down. And we get to kind of play with that and see what feels good when we're entering different scenarios. And sometimes it's a lot to think about. So I try to take those pauses before I'm going into a scenario. So I'm not, in a busy place and thinking like, okay, let me take a moment and dial stuff up. But, practicing those moments of pause when you're in your car or when you're just resetting for the day and just seeing what feels good as you get to know those energy centers and how you can play with the dials. It's a fun
Mm,
practice.
yeah, that sounds so juicy. I'm really glad you brought that one up.
Fun, fun, fun. I feel like we could riff on this um, for ages, but that feels like
Mm,
a good place to pause and a good exercise to leave our listeners with to play with.
yes, juicy. I love
Yay.
listening to frequency music. So you could check out different chakra frequency music on Spotify or YouTube if you're interested in creating a connection with maybe one at a time. Just inviting you to listen to that music to help with that inspiration.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the frequency and the way that interacts with our frequency can be so beautiful and invitational to harmonize with, right?
Yeah.
And and also an invitation to use sound from our own body to release any energy, as things get stirred up, or perhaps you're noticing something that's in that energy center that wants to be released. Sound can be a wonderful way to do that, whether it's listening to sound and letting yourself harmonize or letting the sound be expressed from the body so that it can be released.
Yes. Mm, juicy.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Um, so to our audience, if you have any questions about the energy centers, if you're looking for breath patterns or any tips on how to clear those out, let us know. We'll be happy to reply to you in the comments. And let us know if something resonates. Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. We hope you have a beautiful rest of the day, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye.